to another DroidScript tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to build a to-do list app. And it's a very simple app, but it contains some nice functionality to help you get up and running with DroidScript. And as you can see, the app contains a title, an input box where we can type in something like cook dinner. We have a button here to add it to our list, and it just adds it to our to-do list. And to remove an item from the list, we can long press, up comes an option, remove, and the item's removed. I will also show you how to keep the data persistent, so when you close down the app and reopen the app, the same list appears on the thing. And to extend it even further, we could store the data in using a cloud store facility, which then enables us to keep the data persistent even when or if the application gets removed, or you can use the same application on another device and it has shared data. But we'll go through that later on. So let's get started. For our first task, we need to create our app. So if we go to the main app launcher screen, and we can click on New JavaScript App, and we'll call it My To-Do List, and we'll select the simple template, and as you can see, it's created an app, and it has with a create text hello. Let's just run this to see what happens. If you look at your phone now, you'll see hello in the middle of the screen. Now what we're going to do is change that hello to the title of our app, so My To-Do List. And if we run that, we'll see the title. Now the title's in the middle of the screen, and what it will do is as we add more controls, it will get pushed up to the towards the top. And we can start at the top by removing the vCenter, but we want it to, we're going to keep it like this because we're just going to have it moved up as we go along rather than have it right at the top. Okay, so the first thing we need to add, if you remember from the demo app, is a input text, so we can add our to-do. So if we create a pointer to that called text2 reference, and we need to add a text edit, so we have add text edits. That's an input field, so as the help shows, we need to add it to a layout, so we have the reference up here to the layout. Now, do we need any text? No, we don't, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. Now for the width, we want it about 3/4 of the way across the screen, and we can leave this blank for the height, or we could just do -1. So we have it like that. Now what I was saying about the default value, what we actually want to do is set a hint. So we want a sort of a grey message in there just to tell you what to do. So to do that, there is a method called set hint, and as you type, you can see come in. Right, now we go new to do on there, and if we run that now, so let's see what happens. So if you run that, look on your phone, there you go. So now we have the title to our to-do list, and we have this input field. Now as you can see, they're very close together, so what we're going to also do is add a margin, set a margin for the input field, the top margin. So let's do that now. Select set text to, and using set margins, you can see there. Now what set margins does is it starts from the left. So we have left margin, so we don't want that. And then we want top margin, so we'll call it 0.05, and we'll have no margin to the right and no margin underneath. So now if we run this, we should see, there you go, you see a gap now appears behind the title and new to do. Okay, now we need a button to add whatever we type in our input box to the list that's going to appear below. So let's go ahead and add a button which we're going to have that's going to appear underneath that. So let's create our reference to the button. Now we need to add button. It's asking for a layout. We have a layout reference. Now we have some text. We're going to have add. And we're not going to have a text width and height because we're going to use the default, which is the width of the whatever you type in there. And what we're going to do now is add some bottom margin to your button. Reason for that is because we want a little bit of space between the button and the list. So we're going to follow the margins that we added to the text box, but instead of top we're going to go with the bottom. So remember, it starts with the left, so it's 0, left, top, right and bottom, and we're going to have the same size as what we did with the text box to create some consistency. Now what we need to do is create an event for that button, so it does something when we press it. And to do that we need to use set on touch. As you can see, there are a number of ones you can do. You can set on long touch, touch down. We're just going to have use set on touch. It needs a callback for that, so we can do this on touch. Close that. Now if we run the application, you'll get an error if you press the button because it needs a callback. So let's create that function now. And for right now, what we're going to do to test it, we're just going to do an app.alert. And what we're going to do here is just display the value of our input field. So to do that, we need to just grab the input field, set that there, and to get the text, we can use a method called text. And for the title, we just put alerts. Just put alert, that's it. And we don't need anything else. So now what you will see is when we press the button, it should actually display what we've typed in our list. So let's test that now. Run our app. We have a button appear, which is great. Type something there. Wash clothes. Tap. And there we are. So we now have the content of what we've typed in our text box appear in an alert. That's just what we need. That's great. So now we've got the button. All we need to do now is to create the list ready for receiving the options when we type them in. So let's add our list object to our application. We need a reference to the list, so I'll call it list to dos. And to add a list to your application, we just use the method add list. Nice and simple. We need a layout object and a list object. Well, we don't have any list items, so we'll just keep that bare. And width and a height. So right now we're going to say we want it 0.8, 80% of the height of the device, and we're going to have 0.4 height. Now if we run the thing, you won't actually see anything. There you go. So except what you will see is it's actually pushed all the content up, because now the list takes up a lot of the size of the screen. So now we've got the list, we need to add items to this when we press the button. So let's go back to our button event, and instead of this alert, we need to add the contents of that input box to our list. So basically what we need to first do is just check if the text input is actually filled. So if we just do a check there, could do this and then just do return. So now it doesn't do anything if it's blank. So now we can continue as normal. So we want to do an add item to our list items. So if we get the list, there is a method called add item, and in there we need the string here. Remove that now, don't need that. And also what we need to do is clear the text input string, because what we don't want to do is have the user just keep pressing the button and add multiple items of the same. And that's it. So when we click the button now, it should add whatever we type to our list item and then set the text for the input box to blank. So let's try and run that now and see what happens. So we now wash clothes, add, and there we are, it's listed. And if we press the button now, it doesn't do anything. See? Ironing, there you go. Homework. And so that's our My To-Do List app almost finished. We can now create a new to-do, we can add it to the list. One thing more to do now is to make sure the data stays persistent. At the moment, we can add items to the list, that's fine. But when you stop the app and rerun the app, it starts from scratch again. So now what we need to do next is to save the data when we press the button add. So we can add an item to the list and then we're going to save it to local storage. So to do that, we need to call a method. Let's call a function on here called save list. So when you touch the button, it adds it to the list, and now we save list. So now we just need to create a new function called save list. And the first thing we need to do for this save list is to get the items from the list. So if we just put list items, and we need our list object reference, and to get all the items we just simply use a method called getList. And what that will return us is an array of objects that contain a title, image and a body sort of the list item. So we're only interested in the title. So now we need to create an array of titles so we can then pass that to our text file. So let's create another array. And we're going to loop through the list items that we've just got and then populate the array with the just the titles. So let's put a little for loop together. this and that. I haven't used for loop for a little time actually. I use the map method these days, which I can show you that later on, but for now we're just going to keep it simple with a for loop just to get you understanding how this can work. Then I can show you how to make it a little bit more smaller, the code. Right, so now what that will do is I'll loop through the list items and it'll just push the title property of the of each list item. So now we're ready to save the list to our files, and to do that you can use a built-in method called save text. Now save text, what that, as you can see here, name value file. So we give the name and we're going to call it to-dos. And we need to give it a comma separated list. So to do that we need to join our array using a comma separated list. And the reason we're using that is so when we load the app we're going to create the, if you see the add list here, we've got a separate here, and what we can do is load the contents of this file at the point of loading, and it will then show the data on the screen. So let's give it a file name and we can call it my to-dos, and that is that. So now what should happen is every time we click the add button, press the add button, it'll add the item to the list and also save it to our local file. So now what we need to do when we start the app is to load the contents of that file. So as I mentioned, we need to add it here. So in order to do that, we can use something called load text. Now we have a name default file. So name is to-dos, which is the name of the object in the file with the thing. Default is just an empty space, and the file is my to-dos. So that should now load the text and put it into the list. So let's see how that runs. Okay. Wash clothes. Does it add? Yep. Adds it to the list. Now we can cook dinner. Read a book. Okay. Now you see them all over here. So if we now stop the app and rerun the app, there we go. We see the data is now persistent across the sessions of the app, which is wonderful. And to extend that, what you could use, we could use the cloud store feature in DroidScript, which allows us to then store the information into the cloud. So then if you were to remove your app, for example, or add another app, you could then access the same data, but that's going extending further. Right now we have a to-do list working, and I think all we need to do now to make it complete is to build in a remove function. So we need to be able to remove items from our list. Now let's complete our app by allowing us to remove items from the list. We can add them through the add, and so what we're going to do now is add a long press event to our list items, which will then bring up a dialog box allowing us to remove the item from the list. Okay, so let's do that now. Now in order to do that we need to add our set long touch to our list item So we can do that by adding an event or method to this one. We've got touch here. We want set on long touch because that way we can have it. So it's when the user holds a finger down for a while, then calls this event. So now we have this method here. So let's add that function below. So we have it there on long touch. Now that actually gives us some parameters to work with, and they are a title, a body, a type, and an index. That index is what we need to actually store in a global variable, because what we need to do with that I'll show you in a moment. That's so we know which one to delete from the dialog box. So we'll give that function variable there. Now what we need to do is create a dialog box which will appear giving a list. So it's an actual list dialog. And what's it say there? We need a title, a list, and options. So let's just give it a title, remove item, list. We want, this is the button, so we want to remove and cancel. Then we want, actually no options needed there. We can close that. And what we need to then do is create an on touch event for the dialog, because we need to know when a button is pressed. So we need to just add a touch event to the dialog itself. We've created the list dialog. Now we actually need to just run a method to show the dialog. So that will now show the list dialog on the screen when you long press the list items, which is great. But now we just need to create, to finish it off, create the function for the event, dialog on touch, otherwise we'll get an error. And this one brings with it an item. And we have to, the item is the actual string of the, as we see here, so these are the items here, remove and cancel. So we can put here if item equals cancel, then we can return because we don't need to do anything else. If the item equals remove, we could actually, we don't probably even need that because it's either going to be one remove or cancel. So to be honest, it doesn't really actually mean anything. So we'll actually get rid of that. If it's cancel, we need to return, otherwise we just carry on. So it's an if else really. So now we need to remove the item from our list and then save the new list. And to do that, we need to get our reference for the list, and then there's a method you can call remove item by index, and this is where the global variable comes into force. So we called it selected list index, and this is where it's useful. And now we need to save our list, and that should be it. So it should be done. Right, so we can test that. So if we press play, let's see if we get an error. No, we don't. Now we have the list items, so let's remove the middle one. So if we hold our thing down on that, yay, we get a dialog box, remove items as a title, remove or cancel. Let's press cancel, nothing happens. So we hold long press down, press remove, and it's gone. Brilliant. Now just to confirm that, if we stop the app and we run it again, there we go, the item has been removed. And we can add a new one, homework, and there just to test that it's now adding and still saving the data. So run, there, and there we have it, our very own My To-Do list. So going just to recap over the code, we've created our layout, we've created a title, we've added a to-do input box, we've added an add button, which we've added an event, a touch event to, which then adds our item we've created to the list. We then also save the list to local storage, so we do that. We loop through the list, put the titles into our little array, save the text to local. When we reload the app, we load in what we've created. And we've also added a remove feature. When you long touch over the list item, we bring up a dialog box and we can remove the item. So it's all very simple code, very easy to do, and we have our very own little My To-Do list. I mentioned a little earlier about using a map method instead of a for loop here. So for those interested, I'm just going to show you how we can reduce the amount of code here and make it a little bit cleaner using more modern JavaScript. So we can actually just change this to almost one line. Actually, we can change it to one line. I'm going to show you how to do that now. And I'll get rid of all these afterwards. So actually what we can do is we can put the list item titles, and we've got this here which produces an array. Now we can use the map method, and it calls a function, and in each iteration of every item in the list it provides you the value, which is the object in this instance, and an index. Now I'm going to show you this way, and I can show you how to reduce it even further in a moment. But what we can do is you then return the value.title, which is the title of the list item. Now what that will return is then it returns an array. What do we need to do with the array? We just need to join it. So if we just take that from there and put that there, we then don't need that, and that, and we just need one line there, because we are now returning the map returns us an array of just the titles, which then we want to join into a comma separated variable, and it becomes a string, and then we just pass the string through. So if we just run that now, we can see it does exactly the same. And if we want to add a new thing, brush teeth, we can add it, and there you are. So it's done exactly the same, and it's saved it. We can just submit, stop it, rerun the app, and then you see it there. And using a little bit more modern JavaScript, we can actually remove the function, because we don't need that anymore. Remove this, remove this, and that. And you can do it like that, so it's even on one line, and voila, that returns us an array, and then we join that array afterwards. So if we now run this, see if I've actually got the no, I'm missing after argument list. I'm missing something here. One moment. Oh yes, I've got a curly bracket in there. Don't need the curly bracket. There we go. So now we can exercise, add it, and there we go. And it's saved. And just to confirm it's done the same thing, we can stop, we can run, and there we are. So that's one way of reducing the size of your script and making it a little bit actually easier in a way to read. It can be a little bit confusing when you're not used to it, but that is a sort of using modern JavaScript methods. So there we are, just to show you how a little bit of change can make a difference.